Okay. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yesterday I started the market structure class. This one I had covered. And number of size and firms, nature of product. If it is homogeneous, there'll be perfect competition. And if the product is heterogeneous, there'll be imperfect competition. I think I had stopped at this point. And entry and exit conditions. So entry and exit conditions, it is related to how easily a seller can enter the market. Enter the market means not physically entering the market, starting business in the market. Okay. And exit, anyone, either the buyer or the seller. Okay. He can get out of the market. He can stop his business and get out of the market. So entry and exit conditions also determine the characteristic of market and the level of competition there and the pricing mechanism there. Okay. Patents, you know what is patents? Patents, absolute cost advantages. That means uh, others cannot enter the market or start production or start business because of the cost structure. If the cost structure is very high, then everybody cannot enter the business. They cannot enter the field. When we say market, it is not just a place where the commodities are bought and sold. When we say market here, even the production also comes into picture. Okay, so patents, absolute cost advantages, managerial and technical competence held by big firms. Larger firms, they have all highly trained, experienced persons to manage. They can afford to pay their salaries. But new firms, they find it difficult to employ all the experienced or trained persons. So the technical competence, managerial competence will be higher in case of big firms. They enable them to, they help them to restrict entry of other firms. A well-established firm, it can prevent new firms, smaller firms from entering the market. There may also be some government restrictions on the entry of firms. Like suppose it is railways. The private entrepreneurs, they cannot enter the railways market. And similarly, electricity production in Karnataka. I think throughout the country, in some places, private players are also allowed, but in Karnataka, it is the government which produces electricity and sells it to the consumers, household consumers, as well as the industrialists or the business enterprises. Okay, so there'll be government restrictions. So if there is restrictions on entry and exit, then there'll be market imperfections or the market becomes imperfect. If entry and exit are very easy, then or there are no restrictions at all for the entry and exit of the firms, then the market will be perfect. And status of knowledge. Knowledge about the production, the cost, the quantity, and so on, the cost of production, and so on. I think I had mentioned this also yesterday. A well organized market information system helps buyers and sellers to freely interact with one another to make informed decisions. That means if you know the cost of production, the possible prices, and the market arrivals, what is the total production and how much of the production comes to the market, if you have all the information, then it will be very, very easy for you as a consumer to bargain with the seller and purchase if you like or reject the product. In agricultural commodities, it is so. Everyone knows if some seller of rice, if he says 200 rupees per kg, you say, we don't want. If it is 50 rupees, we'll buy. If it is 55 rupees per kg, we'll purchase. If it is 200 rupees, you keep it for yourself. We don't want, we are not interested. Okay, so because every consumer has some idea about the cost of production of rice. Suppose it is Burma Bazaar or Hong Kong Bazaar or China Bazaar, where the electronic goods, the imported goods are sold. Now, when you enter the market there, you will not be having, most of the people will not be having fair idea about the product, the quality, the price, and so on. Usually our mindset would be when we enter that market, whatever price is quoted by the seller, we should ask for 50%. If the seller says for this commodity, for this good, it is 1,000 rupees per piece, immediately we'll ask for 500 rupees. And finally, the bargain will settle at 750 rupees. So we pay 750 rupees. Actually, its price will be only 250 rupees. And a person who knows, he will come and straight away he says, if you want to sell it, you give it at 250 rupees or else I am not interested. Okay. So because there is no perfect knowledge about the commodities, the quality, the price, and so on. Okay. So if the information is readily available, everyone knows, then there'll be perfect markets, market perfection. Otherwise, it will be imperfect market. Now, types of market structure. Okay. From the point of view of selling, monopoly. Monopoly means there is only one seller in the market. Duopoly, there are two sellers in the market. Oligopoly, there are a few sellers in the market. Monopolistic competition, many sellers. And perfect competition, large number of sellers. Okay, I repeat, monopoly, only one seller in the market. Duopoly, there are two sellers in the market. Oligopoly, there are few sellers in the market. Monopolistic competition, there are many sellers in the market. And perfect competition, large number of sellers in the market. Monopoly, we can easily give example, railways, electricity, okay, KPTCL, that is electricity board, okay. It is an example for monopoly. Duopoly, it is more theoretical, very difficult to find examples, okay. It is theoretical. Then oligopoly, few for example, tractor sellers. There are only a few tractor sellers in the market. It may be HMT, it may be Massey Ferguson, and yeah, only a few sellers. Oligopoly. Similarly, your cooking gas, Bharat, HP, Indian, even your petrol bunks, Bharat Petroleum, then HP, and nowadays we have Shell, Burma Shell, and we have also Reliance. There are only a few sellers of petrol. So oligopoly. Monopolistic, there are many. You can take bath soap, Snana Kupyokso Sabunu. Okay, bath soap. There are many sellers. There are many brands. Toothpaste, there are many brands. Even seeds, there are many seed sellers in the market. Then even chemicals, it comes under monopolistic competition. Perfect competition, competition as such, it's very difficult, but the nearest example is agricultural commodities, because there are so many sellers, lakhs of sellers in India. Okay, it is perfect competition. From the buyer's point of view, monopsony. Monopsony means only one buyer in the market. Diopsony means there are two buyers in the market. Oligopsony, there are a few buyers in the market. Monopolistic competition, there are many buyers in the market. And perfect competition, there are large number of buyers. But here in our discussion, we'll restrict to from the point of view of selling: monopoly, duopoly, oligopoly, monopolistic competition, and perfect competition. Now, perfectly competitive markets, what are all the characteristics? Perfectly competitive markets, competition among large number of buyers and sellers. Perfectly competitive markets. The number of firms must be so large that each individual seller will be a small entity, small unit. Individual sellers or individual buyers will be small units. By his independent action, he shall not be able to influence market price. An individual seller in the market, an individual buyer in the market, especially your agricultural commodities, vegetables, fruits, rice, wheat, jowar, and so on. In these commodities, the individual sellers or individual buyers, they cannot influence the market price. Okay, usually in the agriculture field, an individual producer, a farmer, is only a price taker. He cannot decide the price. He cannot dictate the price. He has to accept the price that is offered in the market. So a farmer who operates in perfectly competitive market is a price taker. Then product shall be homogeneous. I think I mentioned yesterday the rice produced by you. Here I see the names Ankita Verma and Hemant Kumar and Gavi Siddesh Patil. So whether it is produced by Hemant Kumar or Ankita Verma or Gavi Siddesh Patil, the rice remains the same. But it is not so in case of toothpaste. Yeah, there are many brands and each one claims it to be superior. Then existence of free entry and exit conditions. In agricultural commodities, in perfectly competitive markets, anyone can go to the market and sell it, anyone can purchase it. Existence of perfect knowledge of prices, quantity, etc. Yes, agricultural commodities, it is very easy. Absence of government regulations like tariffs, subsidies, rationing, etc. Theoretically, yes, but practically, government provides subsidies. Government also resort to rationing of the agriculture products. Taxes are also imposed, but theoretically, yes, it is totally absent. But these conditions, yes, that's why we say agriculture or agricultural commodities, agriculture producers, they are the nearest example for perfectly competitive markets. Oh, there was one more. Yeah, existence of perfect mobility of factors of production. The laborers, the capital, it can easily move from one place to others. Okay, existence of perfect mobility of factors of production. Maybe in case of agriculture, there'll be some restrictions because of skill. Okay, skill or specialization, they may put some restrictions. Otherwise, yes, agriculture is the nearest example for perfectly competitive market. Then monopolistic competition. So from large number of sellers and buyers, we move to many sellers. Monopolistic competition, competition among many, not large. Okay, so this has the characteristics of both perfect competition and monopoly. Because perfect competition, because some characteristics of perfect competition, because there are many sellers, many competitors. Monopoly, because to some extent they can have influence on the price. So both the characteristics of perfect competition and monopoly. The number of firms is many. No single firm monopolizes the industry. Okay, one firm cannot monopolize the industry. Competition is keen but not perfect. There'll be close competition among the sellers, toothpaste, soaps, seeds, and so on. There is very close competition, but it is not perfect competition. Products are differentiated. One product is differentiated from other product. Okay, however, they are fairly good substitutes. Suppose you go to the market, you want to buy Colgate toothpaste. Suppose the seller says, "Oh, sorry, sir, exhausted. We don't have stock of Colgate toothpaste. If you want, we have Close Up or some other." Okay, immediately you'll say, "Okay, give me Close Up." Okay, so there are fairly good substitutes and differentiated. Even the taste, when you brush your teeth, the taste you get on the tongue, the toothpaste, they vary from paste, one brand to other brand of paste. So products are differentiated. The color, even the design. You have Colgate toothpaste where it is having macro granules. It is translucent, red colored, and within that you find all grains. Okay, so it is differentiation. No collusion among firms. Collusion means all the sellers coming together and forming a cartel, a group. But since there are many sellers, there is no collusion. They do not come together and dictate the price. Each generally ignores the existence of other firms. Colgate, they ignore the Close Up ignores Binaka and so on. Okay, they all ignore each other. Or your Mysore sandal, it ignores what Lux does, and Lux ignores what the Santur Sabun does. Okay, they ignore each other and they don't come together and form a cartel. There won't be any collusion. And no restrictions for new firms entering the industry. It is easier. This is in brief about monopolistic competition. And oligopoly, it is the competition among few sellers. Okay, competition among few. A small number of firms, each producing a large enough portion of the total products to influence the pricing of other firms. Okay, now since there are only 4 or 5 firms which produce that particular commodity in the market, the total contribution of each firm in the market will be huge. Suppose there are 25 producers, that is for monopolistic competition. Suppose there are 25 producers, the share, if they have equal share, the share of each producer will be only 4% in the market. Okay, so it will be small portion for monopolistic competition. But if there are only 4 producers in the market, then, and each one has equal share, then his share in the market will be around 25%. It is a large portion. Okay, so small number of firms, each producing a large enough portion of the total products to influence the pricing of other firms. That means if I increase the price, since there are only 4 producers in the market, immediately, it is not increasing the price, for competition, decreasing the price. Suppose I decrease the price, immediately my competitor will further decrease the price. So there will be cutthroat competition. No one will be in a winning situation. Everyone will be a loser. So we cannot easily play in the market if it is oligopoly. Okay, product may be homogeneous or differentiated. For example, tractors. Tractors, HMT is different from Massey Ferguson and so on. So they are differentiated. But homogeneous, suppose it is cooking gas, your Indian or HP or Bharat gas, every gas is the same. Even petroleum, petrol, it is the same. Okay, so the product may be either homogeneous or differentiated. If there are close substitutes, the firms attempt to convince the consumers. Okay, so usually they are all close substitutes. Suppose if you don't get Bharat gas, you'll apply for Indian gas. If you don't get Indian gas, you go for HP gas. Okay, so they are all close substitutes. What the sellers do is they attempt to convince the consumers through advertisements. One petrol, if you go to the petrol bunk, there will be a big holding, a board which says, fill it, shut it, forget it. That means you fill the petrol tank with the petroleum, okay, fill it, shut the knob, forget it. That means you can drive for kilometers together. That is then advertisement. Okay, so through that they try to convince the consumers that our product is superior. Most of the times it may be homogeneous, that their products are different. There is limited entry to the industry by new firms. In case of perfect competition, no restriction at all. In case of monopolistic competition, it is easier. But in case of oligopoly, it is a bit difficult. There is limited entry to the industry by new firms. Entry is limited by capital requirements. Suppose in a country like India, you have 25% of the market. That means your production should be in millions of tons. That means your investment should be so huge. It should be in thousands of crores. That means it is not easy to enter the market because you require thousands of crores of rupees for investment. Okay, and the market organization, if you want to cater to the needs of consumers throughout India, throughout the country, your market organization should be so huge. You should be able to reach all the states, all the union territories in India. So huge market organizations. Okay, it is needed. So it is very difficult to enter the market. And dependency of each firm on other firms is more because there are only a few firms. Otherwise, if you resort to competition, then it will result in cutthroat competition and everyone will be a loser. So each firm should consider retaliatory actions of others before taking decisions. Retaliation means ನಾನೇನಾದ್ರೂ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ವ್ಯತಿರಿಕ್ತವಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತೊಬ್ರು ಮಾಡೋದು. If I reduce the price, the others will reduce it further. That is retaliation, ಪ್ರತಿರೋಧ. Okay, so consider retaliatory action of others before we make any decision. And in case of oligopoly, there is a possibility of collusion among firms. Okay, since there are only a few firms, since there are only a few sellers, they can discuss, they can come together, they can fix the price. Then when they come together, when there is collusion among the firms, that organization is called cartel. Cartel is a small organization of all the sellers in that market. In case of oligopoly, cartel, or sometimes it is also referred to as pool. However, in real world situation, each tries to influence the pricing of other firms. Okay, I reduce the price a bit so that everyone will follow suit. Okay, so this is in brief about oligopoly. And finally, it is monopoly. Monopoly means no competition at all. Monopoly means ekaswamatya. There is only one seller, only one producer in the market. Ekaswamya, okay, monopoly. There is only one producer of a commodity. There are no close substitutes for a monopoly product. Okay. Cross elasticity of demand for monopoly is zero. This we are yet to discuss in demand and supply chapters. Okay, I have to take it up maybe in the coming week. Okay, next week. So cross elasticity is if the price of coffee increases, what happens to the demand for tea? If the price of rice increases, what happens to the quantity demanded of wheat? Okay, that is cross elasticity of demand. In case of monopoly, the cross elasticity, because there are no there are no close substitutes. So the cross elasticity would be either zero or it would be very, very low. There is no distinction between firm and industry because there is only one firm. The firm itself is the industry. So there is no distinction between firm and industry, and the market demand is equal to the demand of a firm because there is only one firm in the market. A monopolist can either fix the price or the output to be sold. He cannot do both simultaneously. Okay, so though there is only one seller, he cannot influence, he cannot control both the quantity of output as well as price in the market. He cannot control both. He can absolutely control price or he can totally control the quantity of output, but not both. Because if he increases the price at the same time decreases the production and he tries to control both, then the consumers, they may switch to some other product which is not a close substitute. Suppose it is electricity. If the electricity price is increased to a very high extent, then many households, they may say, we don't want electricity, we'll live with candles or kerosene. We'll use the kerosene lamp and we'll live with kerosene lamps. We don't want electricity. Okay, so kerosene lamp is not close substitute to electricity. But if the producer, if the seller, he tries to control both price and quantity, then they may switch to some other distant product. Okay. There are two types of monopolies. One is legal monopoly and the other one is the natural monopoly. Legal monopolies means as per the law, according to the law in India, in Karnataka, electricity cannot be produced privately and sold. Nowadays, we are talking about solar electricity, I mean, solar generated electricity. But here also, the electricity producers, they sell it to the KEB or KPTCL, the government agency, okay, railways, legal monopolies, because as per the law, no one else can produce or sell. Natural monopolies, because of the natural conditions, because of the nature, characteristics of the nature itself, you cannot produce. Jute, India has a monopoly. Jute cannot be cultivated throughout the world, anywhere they like. No, India has a monopoly on that. Diamonds in South Africa, we cannot produce or extract diamond in Bangalore. It is not possible. Okay, so it is natural monopoly. So legal monopoly and natural monopoly. What are the main causes of monopoly? One is ownership of strategic raw materials or exclusive knowledge of production techniques. If couple of decades ago or a few decades ago, the Japanese and Chinese, they had a sort of monopoly in cultured pearls. Pearl, you know, muttu, pearl. Uh, Usually, in the olden days, the pearls were actually extracted from the sea, okay, from the sea. But nowadays, it is produced in the laboratories also. Even in your house, you can produce the pearls. It is called cultured pearls. Mollusca, okay, it is the animal which lives in water, mollusca. You can insert some material into mollusca and there'll be secretion. You have to create some injury and insert some material inside that, and there'll be secretion around that inserted material, and it becomes pearl. Okay, so it is cultured pearl, and this knowledge only the Japanese and the Chinese had earlier, but one scientist, Janaki Raman in Bhubaneswar, Odisha, okay, he developed that technique. He learned that technique and he brought some mollusca from outside, and he was conducting training programs in Odisha, in Bhubaneswar, and I have also undergone that training. So nowadays it is not exclusive knowledge of Japanese and Chinese. Okay, even in India also cultured pearls are produced and sold, and Hyderabad is famous for that. Okay, ownership of strategic raw materials. Then second one is the patent rights for a product. Once you get a patent for your product, nobody else can produce it. Uh, Earlier in India, we had process patenting. That means the same same product can be produced using a different process. But you cannot produce that product using the same process as followed by a patent holder. But after WTO, okay, now it is product patenting. Even using different methods, different processes, you cannot produce a particular product unless you pay a royalty to the patent holder. So patent rights for product also creates monopoly. Government licensing or the imposition of foreign trade barriers to exclude foreign competitors. So government can put a barrier, ban on importing certain commodities. So there will be monopoly within the domestic market. Then an existing firm may adopt a limit pricing policy. That is a pricing policy aiming at prevention of new entry. To give one example, okay, in Majestic area, the Rotigar person, there is a hotel called Rotigar in Basavangudi in Bangalore, and he either purchased or taken on rent one building in Majestic, old building in Majestic, and he started a hotel there maybe 10 or 12 years ago, not recently, 10, 12 years ago. He started a hotel there, and he priced the meals, one meal, 10 rupees, only 10 rupees, and along with meals, he used to give one ice cream free just for 10 rupees. And everywhere else, all the hotels in the surrounding places in Majestic area, the minimum was 20 rupees. One meal was 20 rupees then. And this hotel owner, he started selling it at 10 rupees. So all the other hotel owners, they were up in arms and they started quarreling with him. When we are selling at 20 rupees per meal, okay, how can you sell it at 10 rupees? He said, I can sell it. And in addition, he was giving ice cream free. So this is limit pricing policy. Okay, that seller, that particular hotel owner, he was limiting his price to only 10 rupees so that he could chase away all the competitors. So within 1 week, there was heavy rush in the hotel. Even to get into the hotel, it was very difficult. And all the other hotels in the nearby areas, they were empty, no customers for them. Okay, so that was the condition. Then it creates a sort of. So this is a summary of the market structure, characteristics, perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. We'll look into different characteristics. I think this is visible, right? You can read it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Number of firms. In case of perfect competition, very large. Monopolistic competition, many. Oligopoly, there are only a few. And monopoly, there is one firm, only one firm. Type of product. Perfect competition, it is standardized product or can also be referred to as homogeneous. Either homogeneous or you can also call it as standardized. Homogeneous product. Monopolistic competition, it is differentiated. Oligopoly, it could be either standardized, that is petroleum, then cooking gas, and so on, or differentiated like tractors, chemicals, and so on. Okay. Monopoly, it is unique. Ekameva dvitiya, no substitute. Unique, no close substitute for that. Control over price. Perfect competition, none. A farmer cannot control the price. There is no control. Monopolistic competition, yes, some control, but within narrow limits. And this control is because of differentiation. And oligopoly, limited by mutual interdependence, but considerable with collusion. Okay, if there are in oligopoly, there are only a few, 4 or 5 firms. Okay, if all of them collude, they come together, form a cartel, then they can have substantial or considerable control over the price. If the cartel is not formed, then they have limited control over the price. And monopoly, considerable. He can dictate the price in the market. Then conditions of entry. Perfect competition, very easy, no obstacles at all. Monopolistic competition, relatively easy. Oligopoly, significant obstacles present, mainly because of investment requirement. And monopoly, blocked. No other firm can enter the market. Non-price competition, giving some gifts or some incentives. You purchase one scooter, insurance is free, okay? Or you buy a computer, maybe a hard disk is free, and such things. That is non-price competition. Or maybe you purchase this computer for the next 1 year, will provide free service. Okay, and you purchase this car for the next 2 years, it will be free service, something like that. And monopolistic competition, non-price competition is considerable on advertising, brand names, trademarks, and so on. Typically a great deal, particularly with product differentiation. If there is product differentiation, non-price competition would be more. Mostly public relations, advertising, railways and so on, they don't have any competition. They'll say, if you travel in Indian railways, it is like traveling in, staying in 5-star hotel or something. Okay, so mostly public relations, advertising in case of monopoly. Then knowledge of prices and quantities. In case of perfect competition, it is perfect. Everyone knows about everything. But monopolistic competition, market information system is not well organized. Do you know how much is the cost of production of Coca-Cola? Do you know what is the cost of production of Thumbs Up or some other soap or something? It's not available. Okay, then market information system not well organized. Even in case of monopoly, market information system is not well organized. Profit, in case of perfect competition, it is normal profit, and in all other cases it is super normal profit. If I remember correctly, I have uh, I have given details about normal profit and super normal profit. I have described it. Normal profit is the one where um, there are four factors of production. We have already gone through that: land, labor, capital, and management. Okay, what is the returns to land? It is the rent. What is the returns to labor? It is wages. What is the returns to capital? It is the interest. And what is the returns to management or organization? It is the profit. When we say cost of production, it includes rent, it includes wages, it includes interest, it also includes profit. Okay, so if the price of the product is equal to the cost of production, then we say it is normal profit, because it gives him only that profit portion which is the returns to management. That is normal profit. But in case of monopolistic competition, oligopoly and monopoly, the price will be much higher than the cost of production, much higher. Here it may be a little bit more than cost of production, but in other cases, monopolistic competition, oligopoly and monopoly, the price will be much higher than the cost of production. So the profit will be much higher than the profit as returns to management. So that's why we call it as supernormal profit. So in case of monopolistic competition, oligopoly and monopoly, it is supernormal profit. Whereas in case of perfect competition for agricultural commodities, it is normal profit. Okay. Even if some farmers earn supernormal profit, sometime back, a few years ago, vanilla cultivation, it gave huge profit. Vanilla, okay, vanilla, which is used as uh, essence in juice or ice cream production. Okay, so vanilla production, even in the sweets, vanilla production, it gave huge profit. What happened was, within 1 or 2 years, many farmers, they started cultivating vanilla. When a more number of farmers entered into vanilla production, the supply of vanilla increased. When the supply of vanilla increased, the price came down. So from supernormal profit, it came down to normal profit. So in agriculture, even if some firms, some producers, they earn supernormal profit in the initial years, because of easy entry into the market, large number of producers will take up production of that particular commodity, the supply increases, prices come down, and producers, they start earning only normal profit. That's why we say profit is normal in case of perfect competition. And examples: perfect competition, agricultural commodities; monopolistic competition, retail trade like clothing, shoes, soap, oil, seeds, toothpaste, and so on; oligopoly, fertilizers, pesticides, petrol, LPG, tractors, and so on; and monopoly, public utilities like Indian Railways and electricity production. This is, in brief, this is the summary of different types of market structures we have. With this, I complete that market structure chapter. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I'll go to the next chapter. That is the distribution theory. Theory of distribution. Part of this I have explained in the national income chapter. Okay. National income by distributive share, I had mentioned. Theory of distribution. This is of the total income produced, national income produced, what share goes to the landowners, how much is the share of labor owners, capital owners, and the organizers. Okay, that is theory of distribution. So meaning sharing of the wealth produced, that is the national income, sharing of the wealth produced by a community or a country and economy among the agents. Agents are the factors of production, the owners of the factors of production which have been active in its production, in producing the wealth of the country, wealth of the community. All these factors of production, they are involved, they are active. So sharing that wealth among it in the form of rent, wages, profit, and interest. Okay, that is the theory of distribution. Factor income, different concepts used here. Factor income, it is the reward of the owner of a factor of production that he receives for supplying the factor he owns. If you're a landowner and you're contributing land and you get rent, the rent you receive is factor income. If you're a laborer, you hire out your labor, you get wages, factor income. If you have capital, if you have money and you invest it, you get the interest, factor income. You have some skill, knowledge, experience, you hire out and you get a share in the profit. It is a factor income. But when we say factor income, it does not include the income earned by an individual. Okay, they're not synonyms. Factor income and the individual income are not the same. Individual income could be more than the factor income. He may get income from some other source also. Okay, so individual income usually would be more than the factor income. So personal income, that is individual income or the personal income, it is the income earned by a person as an individual, as an entrepreneur owning and using different factors of production and not as an owner of factor of production. So a person who earns income as an entrepreneur by hiring in, by using the factors of production supplied by others. So it is personal income. Okay. So factor income and personal income are different. Then national dividend. Okay. It is that part of the annual national income of the country which is distributed among the various agents of production in the form of rent, wages, interest, and profit. National dividend is the aggregate net of products and the sole source of payment for all the agents of production. What it means is it includes rent, wages, profit, and interest. Okay, that is national dividend, and I had explained this while explaining the national income concepts. Okay, national dividend or the national income. From one angle, it is the it is income, and from the other, it is cost. Rent. Land owner gets rent. Okay, it is income for him. But the producer, he uses land and he pays rent. For the producer, it is cost. Wages for the laborer, it is income. For the producer, it is cost. For the capitalist, interest is income. For the producer, interest he pays to the capitalist is cost. So each of these items is cost from one person's point of view, and it is income from the other person's point of view. Then transfer earnings. Okay, we had discussed about transfer payments, but that is different. But here, when we say transfer earnings, what it means is it is the minimum price which must be paid to a factor of production, or also referred to as transfer price, to induce it to stay in the industry. To give you an example, suppose all the rural workers, they are migrating to urban centers because their income would be more in the cities or the towns. Suppose the farmers want to prevent the workers from migrating to cities. How much they should pay? Minimum, what should be the wages the farmers need to pay to prevent the workers from migrating to cities? Okay, so that is transfer earnings. It is the transfer price. What an agent will get on transfer to the next best alternative employment from the point of view of the worker. Okay, so what he will get on transfer to the next best alternative. Instead of working in the village, if he goes to the city and works in garment factory, what he would get is the transfer earnings. That's what it says. Factor market. Now, why a separate theory of distribution is needed? Because when market structure has already been discussed and product pricing has also been already discussed. In the previous chapter, we had discussed about different types of markets and prices in the market and so on. Okay, who can control the price, influence the price, all those things we have discussed. Then why a separate chapter on distribution? That's the question here. The answer is because the cost of production of an agent of production cannot be ascertained. It is very difficult. Cost of production of labor. Yesterday also, while discussing about the factors of production, we had asked this question. Is it easy to calculate, estimate the cost of production of labor? It is difficult. That's why we have a separate theory of distribution. So factor pricing is discussed as distinct from the product pricing. Okay. Pricing of factors of production. The importance is factor prices determine the employment levels of various factors of production. When the price decreases, employment increases. If the wage rate is 200 rupees per day, the employment level would be high. If the wage rate increases to 500 rupees per day, then the entrepreneur, the producers, the farmers, they will try to use minimum number of laborers. So when price decreases, employment increases, and when the price increases, employment level goes down. Then second importance of this is factor prices help in allocation of resources among the various alternative uses. How much is allocated to different or allocation, how much of resources are allocated to different enterprises, different activities depends on the price. So optimum allocation results in efficiency. If the price is very high, then we tend to use less labor or less inputs, less resources, efficiency may be at a lower level. If the prices are very low, if the factors of production become very cheap, then there are every tendency to use more than what is required, the resources more than what is required, then also the efficiency level would be less. So if the price is right, then allocation of the resources would be optimum and the efficiency would be maximum. Then, I think it is time. Can I continue for another 5 minutes? Do you have the time or time to say goodbye?
Okay, sir. 5 minutes. Okay. Sir.
Okay.
You can take, sir.
Okay. Factor pricing determines shares of various agents in the national income. If the wages are high, then what income the laborers get is high. If the rent is high, then what the landowners get as a share in the national income would be high. So factor pricing determines the shares of various agents. Okay, if the interest rate is high, then the capitalists would get more income. If the profit level is high, then the organizers or the managers get higher returns or the income. Then theories of factor pricing or distribution. Okay, distribution theory. There are different theories. We'll deal with two. Several widely accepted theories, but we are restricting it to two. One is marginal productivity theory, and the other one is demand and supply theory, or it is also referred to as the modern theory of distribution. Okay. Marginal productivity theory. You know what is marginal productivity? Additional production or additional revenue obtained by employing an additional unit of factor. So marginal utility is the additional satisfaction derived by consuming an additional unit of the product. Marginal returns is additional returns obtained by using or producing one more unit of the output. Similarly, marginal productivity is the additional production or additional revenue obtained by employing an additional unit of the input or the resource or the factor. Marginal productivity of a factor of production is the addition made to total output by the employment of the marginal unit of factor. I think I'll take it up next week. Okay. Yes, Ankita Verma. You have any question? Anyone has any question? Because I don't want to hurry up, so I stopped at this point.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, today Imran's birthday, sir. Can you wish him, sir?
Imran. Imran, happy birthday.
Thank you, sir.
Many, many happy returns of the day. Chennagiri. Baduku Bangara agli. Kannada artha agutta?
Ha, sir.
Baduku Bangara agli. Okay. Many, many happy returns of the day.
Thank you, sir.
And best wishes to all of you. Good day. And see you next week.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye.